Welcome one, welcome all to a special edition of Rift Rewind. We now know the League of Legends World Championship 2020 groups, and we're going to discuss that as well. Rank all the teams going into Worlds 2020. Very exciting. Arda, Emily, Tyler, and Jacob with you. First things first, I want to mention that if you happen to miss it the last time around, we also ranked the top 20 players going into Worlds. That VOD is available on our YouTube channel. Feel free to check that out after you watch this program live. Thanks for watching us live, by the way, on Twitch, on YouTube, on the ESPN app, and on Twitter. So let's get some high-level reactions before we rank the top 20 players. Emily, what did you think of the group draw?
I think, there's a lot to talk about, but it's weirdly, I don't want to say straightforward, but, there aren't, I don't know if it's just the fact that there's a lot to talk about with how even teams are possibly going into this World Championship, where it's a really weird Worlds to begin with. I see a lot of arguments breaking around whether an NA team is going to make it to quarterfinals. Is kind of the biggest discussion I've seen. But in terms of actual groups, I think B is going to be the one that is pretty ridiculous with JDG, Damwon, and Rogue all in the same group. That is already a really stacked group. It reminds me of the Fnatic RNG T1 group of last year, which, also had Twitch, but sorry. Anyway, yeah, I think that's the group that kind of everyone's going to be looking at, because JDG and Damwon have both been cited as potential title contenders. So.
Tyler, what are you thinking?
I have to come from the North American perspective, obviously, and I am cautiously optimistic. And I'm not saying this in a sort of way where I think any of these NA teams are guaranteed to advance. I'm not if right now, gun to head, you're telling me pick each two teams from a group to get it out. I'm not picking any of the NA teams currently to make it out of the groups, but each of the teams have chances. TSM has a very open group. I would say it's the group of life. It's a very exciting group, especially if LGD joins it. It's a very wide open group. I think all those teams have various strengths that they could exert over one another. I think there's some matchups that TSM have over some teams like Fnatic and even Gen G where they could exploit that and get some victories in this, single game, double round robin format. FlyQuest, I think, is getting hammered unfairly. I've been seeing a lot of people saying, oh, RIP Rogue, RIP FlyQuest. And yes, Rogue, RIP in the chat. I'm very sorry. You got JD Gaming and Damwon, two of the best teams in the world. We're going to see very soon in our power ranking as we fight over it. I would presume these are two of the top 5 teams, top 4, maybe even top 3 teams that we're going to have in the entire event going in. It's a very, very tough draw for Rogue. And while TES is another really S-class, opponent that FlyQuest has to face, DRX is not Damwon. They're not TES. They're not JD Gaming. And I love Chovy. I'm on the Chovy train, the Church of Chovy. I will preach his name far and wide. DRX, though, they're not that good. They're not. They are very, very susceptible to a team upsetting them, especially FlyQuest, who I think have a lot of tricks up their sleeve. So while I do think that DRX is favored over FlyQuest, I would not say that's an easy victory for DRX in any question. I think Power of Evil is being underrated heavily. I think he's going to show up a lot of people at this event. And while I do think DRX should be favored, FlyQuest isn't dead just yet. It's not a Rogue situation. And I love Rogue too, but man, they got the worst draw humanly possible. G2 got the best draw possible. Rogue got screwed.
Yeah, G2 did get the best group possible with Suning and Machi Esports in their group awaiting the play-ins. So just to catch everybody up, Jacob, before we get your thoughts here, Group A is G2, Suning, and Machi. Group B is Damwon, JD Gaming, and Rogue. Group C, TSM, Gen G, and Fnatic. And Group D, Top Esports, DRX, and FlyQuest. In the play-ins, you got Ints, Legacy, Mad Lions, Supermassive, and Team Liquid in Group A. LGD, Talon, Rainbow 7, Unicorns of Love, and V3 Esports in Group B. Jacob, what was your big takeaway from the group draw?
I feel like our chat has not watched a lot of LCK because there's this resounding theory that Damwon is not a good team right now in our chat, which I don't understand. Assuming Naguri is fine after his collapsed lung surgery.
Yeah, he's good.
This team has 3 of the like best players in the world, in Canyon, Naguri, and Showmaker, and Beryl is also fantastic. So I don't understand what that's on about, but okay, we'll go with it. I think that though when I look at the groups, the one that is particularly exciting. First of all, I want to say Team Liquid better pray to the gods that PSG Talon, despite all of their issues with rosters, are good. Because if they are, that means that Liquid is guaranteed Group A, which means they could, and I think they can beat Machi and Suning. Although I would give both teams some credit, but that seems like it's a pretty easy group for G2. I'm interested in the European teams because Mad Lions is almost, assuming they get out, is almost assuredly to get Group D. That enters them in that same conversation as FlyQuest, right? In terms of can they be better than DRX? I posted a Necromancer this morning, and I think we all believe that Chovy is kind of the Chovy is a little bit 1v9 sometimes for DRX. I mean, look, if Kyria and Deft can play like they did in the regular season and not in playoffs, I believe a lot in DRX. If that DRX shows up to the table, they should be out of that group. But I do think that Mad and FlyQuest can give them a run for their money, assuming that's the group that we end up getting. And a lot of disrespect to Humanoid and Power of Evil, to Tyler's point. People undervalue both of them heavily, and those guys are really good. So this is like, the Group D is the mid laner group to watch, because you have Knight Chovy, presumably Humanoid, and also Power of Evil. That's a fun group from a mid lane perspective.
So we did a roundtable when the groups conclude. I'm actually going to throw it into chat right now in both Twitch and on YouTube. I have both of them up now. I'm going to be monitoring YouTube. Thank you for everyone watching us on YouTube right now. I am Fancy Thomas, our producer, behind the scenes in our ears, always doing a great job behind the scenes here. So let's talk about, let me ask a couple questions about groups before we move on to the ranking the teams going into Worlds. You personally, your opinion, which group are you most excited about and why? Tyler, let's start with you on that one.
Most excited about? I'm actually going to go curveball here. I think the most obvious answer for me is, it's Group C. It's, Gen G, TSM, Fnatic, ALGD. I'm actually going Group D. Like, I obviously love Chovy. I love Knight. I've hyped up this matchup pretty much all year long. Like I've said, going back to an article I wrote in 2018, right before the 2019 season started, I wrote an article saying, who are the most intriguing players in the world to watch? Who are the young prospects to watch? And I said Knight and Chovy were the 2 players that in a few years were going to take over the scene. And now, 2 years later, they are on the forefront of the scene. They're number 1 and 2 in our top 20 power rankings. And I think, even if I don't think the DRX are a relatively good team in terms of how far I think they can go currently, just with how weak their top side is, I'm very excited to see how Chovy and Knight, 2 close friends, play in a professional setting with the Worlds, the grandness of Worlds, surrounding them. And also, I'm just intrigued by, throwing in Mad Lions and FlyQuest. I don't think it's an easy win for DRX on either of those teams. I would not be shocked at all if FlyQuest or Mad Lions are the team to get out of the group with TES. I think TES should be penciled in, maybe even penned in, of getting out of that group. But I don't think DRX is as easy as a shoe-in as a lot of people are saying. I think FlyQuest and Mad Lions both can give that team trouble. I've watched them all year long. I've never really trusted their top side. And with Deft, who has an injury, he has the same injury I believe that Pawn has with his lower back. He is not in his best form, which sucks because Deft is one of the greatest AD carries of all time. But with Deft not at 100%, Kyria is a rookie. He's kind of fallen off. He's still a great player, but he's fallen off. You can't expect the world from a rookie player. DRX has a lot of holes in them. They do have Chovy, who's the 1v9 machine, one of the best players in the world, maybe the most lane-dominant player in the world, but there's a lot of holes in DRX. So I'm kind of excited to see if Mad Lions or FlyQuest can, upset the card a bit, because I do think there's upsets to be had at Group D.
Jacob, to you?
I was going to say, the other thing that excites me about Group D in particular is, I like that DRX is sort of so inconsistent. Someone in our chat said DRX is going to be the one to beat top one game and lose to FlyQuest and Mad next, which is totally
Definitely.
possible. Like
Definitely.
that's
Possible, yeah.
DRX. That is the DRX coin flip. I also just want to see how Matt is going to fare against some really strong teams in particular, right? Like, I'm writing a piece on them right now, and I spoke to Till and Humanoid over the weekend, and like the thing about Matt is that Humanoid is the staple, and so that's kind of a good thing in a group like this because he's consistent. He doesn't really get nerves. He's like very ironclad, which when you play against Knight, Chovy, and Power of Evil, you kind of need to be. But the rest of the team, right? Like I actually think I'm excited to see Shadow and Kaiser on the world stage for the first time because I think both of them are incredibly skilled. My biggest thing with them has been can they hold up in moments of pressure, right? And I honestly don't know the answer to that right now. But I mean, I would say like Shadow's better than Piosik, and I think that Shadow's going to be able to hold his own against Santorin, and against Top as well. Like to me, more generally, like that group is really interesting. It's a good test of Shadow's skill being able to go up against Santorin and Karsa, and I'm excited for that. But the group I'm excited for is C. The reason I really like C is because it's not as clear cut, I don't think. You know, we were talking about this before the show that Gen G should be number one out of this group. Gen G is a really good team. But the thing is with Gen G is they've not necessarily been consistent this year, and I feel like that's a story dating back 2 years now, even with some roster changes. Their roster is really good. Like you look at BDD, Clid, and Ruler, right? Like these players in some cases are the best in their role, or some of the best in their role in their region. But they, in theory, all should be, right? Like, these players are fantastic. But they have struggled. And what makes that exciting is that they're playing against a few teams who I actually think can give them a run for their money. And the second place out of that group, assuming it's LGG, Fnatic, and Team Solo Mid, fighting for it, like, that is particularly interesting to me. I will say European fans, because it seems we have a lot of them in our chat, say a little prayer for Nemesis, because he's going to get absolutely reamed in this group. This is he's playing against Bjergsen, presumably Xie, and BDD, some of the best mid laners in the world, and that's going to be quite difficult. And if they ban Lucian, he is going to have a very difficult time. So yeah, but say a little prayer for Nemesis.
Emily.
I actually don't think so. I'm gonna go in my group in a minute, but I don't think Gen G have been super inconsistent whatsoever. I think they beat who they were expected to beat. They went 1-1 with Damwon in the regular season, and the only team they lost twice to is DRX. And then additionally in the postseason, I kind of think that if we hadn't had all those internet issues, they probably would have beaten DRX right then and there, obviously. Regardless of like the Chovy 1v9 narrative. But anyway, moving on from that, I just want to say I don't think Gen G have been inconsistent. Like as inconsistent as people think, I guess. My group to watch is still Group B. Like, I don't know why you guys haven't mentioned it. I really want to see JDG and Damwon play each other. I want to see Rogan there as well. I actually think one of the unfortunate side effects of a single game format is that you do get to the point where anyone can beat anyone and people make a ton of snap judgments. So I'm going to remind you guys of something that happened last year after FPX's first game against J Team rather. And everyone was like, hey, this is 2015 LGD. This is going to be a huge collapse. This is going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. FPX are expletives. They're terrible. They're the worst team. How is this kind of... I even wrote an article, I think that's titled, It's Not Tilt, like my working title was It's Not Tilt, That's Just FPX. Anyway, I'm putting that aside because I think a lot of narratives come from the single game format that are really disingenuous. And I also do think that JDG and Damwon both have the potential to drop single games in a single game format. Probably to each other, but also to Rogue. So I think I really want to see this group. I want to highlight a matchup that I wrote about that people might not be watching for, but the Beryl Lumao matchup. Come on, guys. Like, everyone was complaining we didn't have supports. we didn't have supports on our list. Like
They
these
should
are the
have.
two that we did talk about that didn't make it to that top 20 players list. And if you like vehemently disagree with us, then you're probably also looking forward to this matchup because it's two really great supports who are both really good at these kind of roaming, initiating types. And if the support meta changes, then they might both look a lot worse. But hopefully it will not, and we'll be able to see them on stuff like the Pantheon, like the Bard, for Beryl and Lumao respectively. So I don't know, like I love this group. I am really looking forward to it. Last year, the RNG T1 Fnatic group was my favorite for the same reason. You just have three like really, really strong teams, and it kind of sucks that one of them is not going to make quarterfinals, to be quite honest. So yeah, that is my group. Like I am sticking with it. I Group of Death is kind of a whatever name, but like I'm really looking forward to seeing the teams in this group go at each other.
Zoom and Naguri versus Finn is, and we'll see.
It's a mismatch.
If Boss is the one to qualify in this with Unicorns of Love, assuming that if Unicorns of Love, the way this works for people unfamiliar, if the teams that qualify out are indeed Mad Lions, LGD, Team Liquid, and then whatever that other is, if it's anyone except PSG Talon, then Liquid and whatever that fourth team will be coin flip into A or B. And assuming Liquid goes into A, that will be a very rough time for whichever minor region top laner ends up in that group. That is the top lane group for sure with Zoom and Naguri.
So if you want more analysis on the groups themselves, you can go to espn.com/esports. We did a instant analysis roundtable that you can find there, who we think the group of death is, the group of life. Answered a bunch of questions there. You can go find it there at espn.com/esports. Why don't we rank all 22 teams going into the League of Legends World Championship? Of course, there was some news. Before we got to Worlds, it used to be 24 teams. The Vietnamese contingent can no longer make it. We reported on it on our website. Another thing we should report on before we get to our rankings here of our teams, Jacob, is that there will be some changes as it pertains to the play-in team PSG Talon. It looks like all their starting team cannot make it to Worlds. What's the update?
Yeah, so it is confirmed that Uniboy and Kongwei, the jungler and mid laner of AHQ, will be subbing in for PSG Talon because their mid laner and jungler are South Korean. And if you have paid attention, watched the video that Jeannie Doi did with me and Emily a few weeks ago. South Korean players only, until they go into military service, they can only get 1 year visa or 1 year passports. And it's actually quite difficult to be able to get that extended, emergency extended, to get a visa to China. To get into China, you have to have 6 months or more left on your passport. So if you do the math, if they got that issued in December or January, then there's not 6 months left because there's not 6 months left in the rest of the year. There's 3 or 4 when they applied for it. So we know for certain that they will have Uniboy and Kongwei from HQ, and it is rumored that they are also going to be using D, a former pro player who is the coach of Machi, as their AD carry. So the PSG Talon team that is competing at Worlds will be 2/5 of the team that qualified, or either 3/5 or 2/5 of the team that qualified from the PCS. I almost said LMS, but from the PCS. And yeah, I think that's going to really affect how we rank them. I also think that it's going to affect their play. Not that I think any of those players are bad. I think they're actually quite good. These are probably some of the better subs you could get if you're in this situation. However, being really uncoordinated is going to be a huge issue for them, I think, because they don't have much time. Play-in starts in 10 days, and these guys got to figure it all out. I don't even know if they're all in China yet, all the other subs in. I know that D is because he's Coach Machi, but I don't know about the others. So this is a huge issue for this team, and I actually would be talking about them as one of the better minor region teams if not for these issues.
Where we left off is we gave our reactions to groups, a couple of news and notes, particularly about PSG Talon and the makeup of their roster going into Worlds. If you happen to miss that, I'm sure there will be a VOD that will be available on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports, and thanks for watching us there as well. So I have chat pulled up for all of your opinions as my esteemed colleagues go through ranking their teams going into Worlds from 1 to 22. We're going to start from the bottom, and we're going to go all the way to the top. So when you look at the field, Tyler, who's the worst team going to Worlds?
All right, I'll be the bad guy here, Art. I'll be the bad guy. I was the bad guy on the top 20 show. I called all the wild card teams off of the bat. And all these teams are world teams. They've all made Worlds. Congratulations. Claps to you all. You all did a great job. You all made it. There's no participation trophies at Worlds, though. And for me, I'm going to be totally transparent. I do not have the capabilities of watching every single regular season game of all these regions. No one does, not even Emily. And she pretty much watches every other thing. And she barely sleeps. So it's pretty impossible to watch all of these regions. So what I did is I watched the major region. I watched the finals of every wildcard region to get kind of the feeling of the teams, read up about them, talk to some, pros and analysts from those specific regions just to kind of see what the temperature is of these teams. And from all the regions I watched and from everyone I've talked to, I think my vote for the worst team coming into the 2022 or 2020 World Championship of the 22 teams is I think Talon, if they really are having to play with a coach, Machi's coach, might be the worst team if that actually is a thing that actually happens. But if I do think Uniboy and Kongui are good players, so I'm not going to rank them last. I do think the last for me, though, would be V3 of Japan. Watching them, they are a decent team. I don't think they're fundamentally terrible. I don't think they're mechanically garbage or anything. They beat DFM 3-2 in the Japanese finals. DFM, who've been the reigning Japanese champions for what I believe the last 2 years, going to the World Championships with EV, Saros, all those guys. For me, V3 is very much Boogie's team, the South Korean jungler who was on the Flash Wolves team that made MSI last year. Did pretty decently, but Boogie has really carried this team like no one I've ever seen before. I think for the first time ever, he's the first jungler to lead his team in kills over an entire season. He has 20 more kills than his AD carry, who's number 2 on V3 Esports, which kind of just amplifies how important Boogie is to the team. When he is doing well, when he is carrying on champions like Lilia and Nidalee, V3 does well, as they did versus DFM in the finals. When he's not, when he looks average, which we've seen on the international stage before, if that's the best V3 has, probably not a lot to, they're not going to be the scariest team going against, LGD Gaming and Talon, some of the other teams in the wildcard region. So for me, I would say V3. Unlike DFM of old, which usually have had brought up tricks up their sleeves, I think Saros has always been a tricky player, which is why I value DFM more highly than I believe I value V3, just because I think they have more of a dynamic to them where they can, bring a curveball to the world stage, which is always important. They play relatively standard. They play around Boogie. I don't think Boogie's I wouldn't even say he's probably even the top half of the junglers in the play-in, so I can't give much credit or much hype to V3. I hope they do well. I would say they're the last team, on my opinion.
Boogie also is just, his playstyle is so one-dimensional. Just looking, I opened his match history, he literally has one win all season on a tank, and it is Trundle. It's one Trundle win. That's it. Everything else is Graves, Lilia, Nidalee, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, right? You go to Silas. You go down the...
I feel in fairness, you can't count that against him because most of the junglers going to this event are like that. That's the jungle meta right now. I think he really benefits from it. I'm not fighting to say V3 shouldn't be last, by the way. I'm just saying that that's not really, if you look at, I feel like the jungle, not that they can't play those champions, but if you look at the jungler history of a lot of the qualifying teams, their most recent played champions are going to be Graves, Lilia, Lisa, and Nidalee. That sounds like most of the LPL junglers.
Let me just interject, just so that we don't veer away from ranking the teams and have a big jungler discussion here. V3 and Legacy is the bottom 2 teams. Any objections here?
No, I was going to bring up Legacy just because I think Mammoth of last year, we were talking about this off camera, but they were probably the best, one of the better teams that OSHA sent in a while. And all but one of those players who's now on Legacy have left Osh, right? This past year was the Great Oceania migration to other regions, specifically North America and Europe. So I actually don't have like a super strong opinion on either of these teams in terms of who should be last. I will leave it up to you guys, but for me, it's between Legacy and V3. If it was DFM, I'd definitely say Legacy is the bottom.
Yeah.
Because at least I know that DFM, like Ebby, is actually, I think, is really good, like individual player. Tyler already brought up Saros, but this V3 team is completely different, and I think they will get pretty hammered by other teams, even in this playing group. So, yeah, I like don't have a strong horse in this particular race, so I'll leave it up to you guys. I would actually still put Legacy last. I'm sorry, Oceania. But it is completely up to you all.
I like Legacy more. I think Legacy's a bit better from what I've seen. I think Raze is really good in the bomb lane. And for me, the thing is, the sad thing about Oceania right now is that they are the new feeder system to all English regions, like to Europe, to NA. This kind of the World Championship is kind of an audition for these players, for these, European and NA, either academy teams or LCS teams, or we saw Destiny going to the LEC, where Destiny, Fudge, Triple, and King all on Manf last year with Bobip, who's now the jungler again on Legacy. All four of those guys were picked up and brought into the NA and EU scenes, leaving the kind of the dredges of talent that we see in Oceania, where I think Legacy is a good team. They're decent. Like, I think on the world stage, they get outclassed by a lot of these other teams. But I would still put them above V3. I think I like Raze a lot. Tapoon, their top laner, is really good. I think I would take him over most of the players on V3. I would give Legacy the slight edge over V3. I'm not very impressed by V3, especially since they're such a one-dimensional team around Boogie, and I don't think Boogie's that great of a player on the international
stage. The great oceanic exodus is what this past year has been, and it's unfortunate. Someone in our chat said Ryoma was oceanic faker, and that's how bad Oceania is. So I mean, the region to me is really weak. I would say V3 is worse, but I think it's a very marginal difference.
Okay, so we have Legacy Esports at 21, V3 at 22. We'll leave them there for now. It seems as though we all agree that they should be the bottom two teams, so we can revisit that later. In the next chunk, let's say the 20th position, let me introduce PSG Talon, Rainbow 7, and Ints.
Rainbow 7, I mean, I like Rainbow 7. I wouldn't put them.
So my thing is, I don't think Brazil is that great. Brazil's been good in the past in certain years. I don't think they're that great this year, so INTZ is probably not high for me. But Talon is such a wild card with being potentially 2/5 of their qualifying roster. What data do we have to predict a roster that literally has never played together? That is incredibly hard. We know the individual players, particularly Uniboy and Kongmi, who are coming in. D was a coach all season, so you can't really say much about that. And so, I'm inclined to put PSG Talon here at 20, even though that their region is one of the better wildcard regions. But God, I don't know. They're really hard to predict for me. But INTZ is pretty awful, so I don't know which one I want to put down there.
I delegate into Brazilian expert Emily Rand. She can give the death knell of Brazil if she wants to. I respect her opinion on Brazil.
Because my neighbor's dogs are barking. I was gonna say I can speak a little bit to INTZ. Brazil, in my opinion, is not good. Despite the fact that I actually love a lot of the players on this team. I really want them to do well, which is not a good indicator of where they should be placed. But these are all players that anyone who's watched Brazil for a little while will be familiar with. And I think their main issue is going to be once they go up against some of these teams, they're just going to have better mechanics, first of all, just individually, which we talk about individual mechanics a lot when we compare players, but when you're looking at a lot of minor region teams, it actually suddenly becomes a huge difference because it's how much can you improve your mechanics in the short time that you have while you're on the super server, right? Which is why I definitely think PSG Talon should be higher than both R7 and INTZ.
Ooh.
I do. Like, I honestly do. I think just like based on the, like, yes, I know we don't know how they're going to play, etc. But just individually, even if it is a roster of Hanabi, Kongwe, Uniboy, D and Kaiwing, right, is what we're looking at in terms of the rumored roster. I still think that roster will beat out INTZ and Rainbow Seven. Like, you can come and make fun of me later on if I'm wrong, but for me, it honestly, unfortunately, comes down to a lot of like individual mechanical errors that can happen with these teams.
I agree with with Ints. I don't agree with Rainbow Seven. So I'm okay putting Ints at 20. That's fine.
Yeah, INTZ can be 20. I agree.
Okay, so INTZ's at 20. Okay.
Above Rainbow Seven. From
So
what
we can revisit
7
this. Remember, this is an initial placement. So right now, and we're going to continuously update this. We're not putting them on the list, and that's final. We're going to revisit this once we've ordered it. I'm just moving things along so that we can come back to it after we've given it some thought. Right now, from 18 to 22, we have PSG Talon, Rainbow Seven, Ints, Legacy Esports, and V3. But we can revisit the ordering a little bit later.
I mean, I think Rainbow Seven should be higher too, to be honest.
Yeah,
like,
I
even if
put
it's
them
just
over
one
there.
spot above PSG Talon, this is
Okay.
a Talon team we've not seen play at all. I don't know. I like Rainbow Seven.
And if we're going to talk about mechanical skill, Shadow and Jose on Rainbow Seven right now are two of the top foreign players on the Chinese super server of all the international players playing right now. Like, those two players are obviously mechanically skilled. I do think Rainbow Seven have a lot of faults. They play the game very slowly. They're not very good in the early game. They come alive much more in the mid game with the skirmishing and the team fighting. They play pretty standard style. They don't really have much trick up their sleeves from what I've seen from their play in the playoffs. They play a lot of front to back. Leza, their Mexican AD carry, plays Ash and Caitlyn, very fast pushing, getting those turrets plays, getting the objective control of Dragon, setting up for team fights where they play a lot of Galio, Nautilus, mid and support. And then they usually play around their jungler, Jose, who's excellent. He's an excellent player. I implore you, even if you aren't a huge fan of Rainbow Seven or don't think they have a great chance to go far at Worlds, go please watch their reverse sweep of the All Knights in the LL final. Jose plays absolutely insane. He has some really crazy plays on Lilia, and he wills his team to victory some of these times. So while I don't think I'm not gonna say Rainbow Seven's going to make the main event or they're gonna get it out over Supermassive or Unicorns of Love, I don't think they're a very good team, and I have more confidence in Rainbow Seven, even if they play slow, even if they're not the fastest team, even if they're similar to a team like maybe Team Liquid where they need to quicken up the pace. I would still take them as that 5-man team who I know and I've seen them play over a grab bag of Taiwanese and Hong Kong players over at PSG Talon, especially if they're playing with a coach of Machi as their AD carry, if that comes out to be true. So I like Rainbow Seven over Talon, but that's...
Well, we can revisit that.
You guys outvote me because I'm not going to fight super hard, but I still think that Talon should be ahead.
This is where I would ask the question as we get into the next chunk here, because now we're looking at Unicorns of Love, Supermassive, maybe even Team Liquid here, probably not. But here's my question. This is where I want to ask this question. This is more generally for the remainder of the play-in teams. Would you rate any of the play-in teams above Machi Esports?
Unicorns? I really like Unicorns.
Yes, but not by much.
Yeah, it's not like a giant...
Kind of a
league.
toss-up. Yeah, I don't have
PCS is a really good region. PCS is a really good region. So I don't want to take it away from Machi, and they were the dominant team in the PCS also. But LGD also is a very good team, and so is Mad Lions.
Watch this, man.
So I think UOL, UOL is definitely the best. Can we just say the best of the minor region teams, for sure?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
with Supermassive a close second, by the way.
It's hard.
Yes, it's kind of in between. They're in that same state of Vietnam if they were here, right? Where they're kind of in between being a minor region, major region, however you want to classify that. I think they're better than Supermassive, as much as it hurts to say as a Cacao fan since 2013. but yeah, I think I still think that I would put Machi at the same, like at about the same from what I've seen. And again, like I have not been able to watch a lot of PCS um or LCL, so the CIS region. But I'll say that like that is kind of the border. I do want to make the argument for UOL as better than Supermassive by a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I watched both of their finals. I was more impressed by Unicorns of Love. I think both teams are really good. I think both teams could get out of that fourth like wild card spot if Mad, Team Liquid, and LGD all go chalk and do get out of the qualifiers as they should. The thing with LCL is it's so difficult because the region is so top heavy. The region doesn't really have a lot of depth to it. So what we get a lot of times is we get Unicorns of Love and Gamut, to be fair. Those two teams just ran roughshod over the entire competition during the summer split and just slapped around everyone. I believe Unicorns of Love are the only team in going to Worlds who have a combined kills per minute over 1. So they are the bloodiest team going to Worlds, and they were one of the fastest teams statistically, which does look amazing. But when you look at how some of the weak of the competition is in the lower ranks of the LCL, it kind of brings back and tempers excitement. I still do think, though, if you just look at the team as a whole, you can compare them to last year's team if Anax or if Anax is a better starting AD carry than Gadget. I think they're maybe mechanically Anax is better. I think now, but he wasn't speaking the same language as his team. This team now can all speak in the same language, which I think is a big boon for Unicorns of Love. They dominated the competition. They can be sloppy at times, as again, they're a very bloody team. They were down a lot of points versus Gambit in the early game, and they had to fight back with some pretty clean team fighting. But overall, I like Unicorns of Love a lot. The last 2 years, LCL have sent really good teams to play, and they've barely missed out. Cloud9 beat Gambit 3-2 in the qualifiers. That Cloud9 team made top 4. Last year, this UOL team
Nearly beat Splice, yeah.
Almost got through Splice in a very, very bloody series, and Splice made top 8. So just going back off history from what I've seen, I think UOL are the best of the playing teams who are from the wildcard regions. If versus Machi, I'd personally put them above Machi. That's just me. I have more confidence in this Unicorns of Love team over Machi. I think the PCS is still a rebuilding region. I think a lot of people still see it as the LMS and try to see it like, oh, it's the LMS. I think
HQ, yeah, it's
HQ, but I think they've weakened a bit. It's kind of like the LCK in 2015 without Rocks Tigers and SKT, where I feel like it's still a rebuilding region. They're still trying to find their footing. I do think losing Candy, who I thought was one of the better players of the PCS, was a big step back. So for me, I would put Unicorns of Love barely above Machi, but I'm a big Unicorns of Love supporter. I think this is the year. 2 straight years LCL have barely missed out. I think this is the year they make main event. I think they have, depending on what group they go to, I think if they go to Group A and they have G2, Suning, and Machi, I think they can take some wins there. I think they can make it very exciting. I don't think Unicorns of Love should be overlooked.
You've been talking about Unicorns of Love a lot. Sorry, Emily, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I would still put Machi. I feel like I'm suddenly turning into, like, the PCS defender here. I would still put Machi above UOL based on what I've seen. I think they're a pretty well-coordinated team. You have, I don't know, like, when I compare, like, I think the LCL, to your point, is very top-heavy. I also think the PCS is really very but I think the main difference still is that these PCS teams are here taking PSG talent out of the equation because of roster swap, like the fact that they have to sub, is that they do get some pretty good practice, like in terms of scrims and in terms of their solo queue. So I think that always like slightly gives the edge to me because I feel like regardless of how these teams perform in their regions, we come every year to Worlds and something like this happens. I think it'd be really cool to see UOL come out and make a huge statement and eliminate I mean PSG is like I would definitely put them below UOL because of the roster swaps, but I would still keep Machi above them for now. I mean, it's so even. I don't really have a huge opinion because I don't feel like I can confidently speak to either of these teams' play styles after only watching like their playoffs and finals. Does that make sense?
UL did take a game off G2 in scrims that was leaked. They did win a scrim. I know we all know scrims.
Ooh, you know what? Put him at number 4. Put him at number 4. Number 4.
Do you know?
Put him at number 4.
Chinese scrims, just generally.
Guys, if V3 takes a game off of any of the top 10, we're bumping them up to number 8.
Huh?
Okay, so my thought on this is Machi over UOL, and then the other 3 play-in teams over Machi, being LGD, Team Liquid, and MAD.
I can buy that. What do you guys think?
I mean, I got outvoted, so
I
sorry,
would
UL.
go LGD, MAD, TL in that order.
Yeah,
I agree with
LGD, Mad Lions,
TL.
Team Liquid, Machi. Well, okay, so Machi, Unicorns of Love at 15 and 16 we're sort of wavering on, but let's just put them in that block for now.
It also seems like, so how do we feel about FlyQuest?
I love FlyQuest.
And, I mean, I also love FlyQuest. But, like, now you have to start bringing in, for this, like, tier, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we will talk about that tier in a second. I just want to get to one thing because there's a lot of Supermassive fans in the chat. I did have a chance to ask their GM. I wanted to bring this forward. We kind of just glossed over Supermassive, which is fine. I'm the homer here. I'm the Turkish guy. I get it. I did reach out to their GM, Ulaş Gülkirpik, who is the GM of Supermassive. He did not travel with the team, although the owner of Supermassive is with the team in China right now. I did ask him, like, just give us a little bit of information on the team for those who didn't watch them that much. And by the way, if you didn't see Tyler will back me up on this. The TCL final looked really cool. I loved the presentation. It was really, really, really awesome when Supermassive won there. This is what Ulaş had to say, the GM of Supermassive, about his team. Historically, for years, we've been a very bot-sided focused team, and mainly thanks to our star AD carry, Zaytnot. This year, we made several squad changes and strengthened our solo laner significantly. We brought back Snowflower to the team because he was with us in 2018 through our most successful year, and the synergy in our bot lane was simply magical. The icing on the cake has been Kakao, as Emily mentioned, who is obviously a legend. He is absurdly intelligent, and the game is almost muscle memory to him despite all the changes League of Legends went through. If we are on our day, there isn't a play-in team we could not bring down. Obviously, some hubris there. Maybe it helps LGD is not in our group, and we are not likely to match against them, and goes on to left. So that's a little background on Supermassive and what they bring to the table.
They're very good. I think Armut, their top laner, their top laner Armut's really good. I think, honestly, I have more confidence in Supermassive than Machi. I'm not a big Machi fan. I'm not a big PCS fan. Sorry, PCS. Like, I've watched your play. I don't think the PCS is that much better or a level above maybe even Turkey or the LCL. Maybe I'm a secret EU bandwagon.
And I think it's really close, which is why I'm comfortable with how we have it right now. Machi over UOL and Supermassive. Just barely, though. Like, that's 15 to 17. Like, that is a really contested...
Yeah.
I also feel like this is a year where it could change because I do think the PCS is worse than the LMS, like just by nature of how, like the previous problem with that LMS came out of was that the GPL wasn't competitive because LMS teams just kept beating up at literally everyone. And I mean, I feel like these are all really close for now. I still err on the side of PCS, if only because, unfortunately, and again, like, this is a terrible way to analyze teams, so people can totally yell at me for this, but, like, historically, we've still seen PCS teams come out and show up compared to the Turkish and LCL teams in terms of, like, making it out of play-ins. Generally, like, I know it's really close, but that's where I'm at for those. And again, like, I already realized that, like, that is a very faulty level of results-based analysis. And I'm, like, owning up to that. But unfortunately, until I see one of these teams actually like break through in the past few years, and again, like this whole format is actually really terrible for minor regions. Like it's so much more difficult for them to get out and for them to make a statement. And unfortunately, I think Supermassive is in a really interesting group because they can, like, theoretically have control over their own destiny. If we've already talked about INTZ and Legacy, but if they, again, it's a single game format, and am I going to say that they can't beat MAD or TL? No, of course they can. Like, especially in a single game. Like, this team definitely can. Specifically, I'm glad you brought up Zeitnot and Snowflower because they've played before and they've been a duo lane before, and they're very good together. So I think like there's a familiarity there that's also worked in their favor. But again, like I mean, I'm still gonna err on the side of the PCS until proven wrong, I guess. Does that make sense?
Can I bring something up? Let's go look at those results. When was the last time the PCS, the LMS, sent a team to top 8 at Worlds? When was it? Let me tell you. That was all the way back in 2015. The LCL has sent a team to the top 8 of Worlds more recently than the LMS, which is stronger than the PCS. I think we have this notion of Flash Wolves in our head, and we think, oh man, Flash Wolves always makes top 8. They always do well at Worlds. They don't really. And for the most part, they usually go at best 2-4, 3-3. And the other two LMS teams have gone 0-6 almost every other year. We've had MAD. We've had Hong Kong Attitude. We've had Machi. We've had a lot of these LMS teams get free slots into the main event, and they've gone smashed. So I do think we need to like separate this notion that like the LMS or the PCS is like a level above some of these other regions, because they're not. I do honestly believe in my heart of hearts, I would take Unicorns of Love and Supermassive at this point over Machi. And I'm going to stand on probably on the island alone like this, but I think
it's a good point. I think the weirdest part about this, and the reason why like I can't necessarily defend the PCS thing, is like PCS gets like, for example, HK, everyone was like, oh, they're so bad, they're never going to make it out of play-ins. They made it out of play-ins. I think that is the big thing for me, because Machi is auto-seeded, right? Whereas like if they were in the play-in instead of PSG Talon, who has to make all these roster changes, so we can't really like judge them as a team, there'd be a lot more like analytically based stuff to go through here, because I would still say, yeah, Machi is probably going to make it out of the play-in stage, even with the addition of Europe and China. But again, like I don't really have like a huge dog in this fight, and I also can't specifically speak to their playstyle because I haven't watched them all year.
I think LCL...
I'll be the decider here then. I think Machi better than Unicorns of Love, but I think where we have them right now is correct. They are right next to each other. They are 15 and 16, right? Like I think people read much into power rankings in the sense that coming into this, I think Machi is a better team. Do I think that Unicorns of Love, if they end up in that group, if the coin flip goes, right? Unicorns of Love, Team Liquid, MAD, and LGD are the groups that are the teams that make it out. The coin flip goes in the favor, and we do get a Unicorns of Love versus Machi game, right? Like that is a possibility. If that happens, do I think Unicorns of Love could win? Probably, right? It's totally possible. I wouldn't like hard favor Machi, but I think putting them 15 and 16 respectively is the right call. I think Machi right now is the better team, but I don't think, with two and a half weeks worth of scrims, that UL could not be better and beat them if that is the group that we end up getting.
So
that is totally possible.
We have LGD at 12, so we'll show you what we have so far in terms of rankings. So we have 12 to 22. We could revisit this. We're just going to put all the teams on the board and then see where they fall afterwards. LGD's at 12. 13 is Mad Lions. 14 is Team Liquid. 15 is Machi. 16 Unicorns of Love. Supermassive. Rainbow 7. PSG Talon. Ints. Legacy Esports. And V3. And that will come up on your screen at some point in time. Let's now move on to much of the group stage. And invariably, this is where we will begin talking about NA teams. And Tyler, I just want to mention one thing that I watched yesterday that depressed me greatly. I watched a content piece from TSM on YouTube where they had all 5 starting members talking about Worlds and their predictions. And one of the questions in this video, Tyler, was how will NA do at Worlds? And one of the first responses inexplicably was talking about Cloud9. And that to me tells you how these teams are wavering in their we have to appear confident and maybe a part of us is confident, but we're also buying into the NA sucks. The NA can't do anything at Worlds, and there's this teetering. If you watch the whole video, if you're an NA fan, you will just get more and more depressed, and it will feed into your depression like a warm, comfortable blanket of unhappiness. Tyler, where are we ranking our NA teams?
Oh, they'll probably rank them at the bottom of the group stage teams, but I just want to say that
I would say that at least FlyQuest may be worse than LGD, but
I mean, I really like FlyQuest, and I think
I do too.
I was gonna bring up to Artist's point is I think FlyQuest is the antithesis of what you're saying, where FlyQuest is telling everyone we don't suck. Stop telling us that we suck. I think people look at FlyQuest, they look at the brand, they look at the colors, they look at that they're North America, and they're like, man, this team must be bad. Like they just must be bad. I do agree that Solo could be a weakness. I do think Solo on his own, if Santorin isn't watching out for him and he's against a Nuguri or a Zoom, might get crushed. But I do think this team has a lot of experience. I think PoE is heavily underrated. I think Santorin is having a career year, and I think the bottom lane is experiencing quite good. I think Ignar is a curveball that I think most teams aren't ready for. I think he can be a game changer to the same levels as Lumao or Beryl. I don't think he's as consistent as those two players, but I do think we've seen at Worlds before that he can be a game changer like player. So I think LGD is probably above FlyQuest. If you're telling me on a 1v1 who's better, I'd probably take LGD. But I just for some reason, I have a good feeling about FlyQuest. It's a similar feeling to how I had of Clutch Gaming last year, where Clutch Gaming went 0-6, but I still felt like they did North America proud. They should have beaten Fnatic twice in the group stages, and they lost both of those with a pretty giant lead in both of those games. I feel like FlyQuest is going to do NA proud. I think they're going to not just roll over and die. I think they're going to give a good fight. Do I think they are better than LGD right now? Probably not, but I'm not a big fan of LGD either. I think both teams have holes, especially on the top side. I don't trust either of their top sides. So I think it's a curious debate. It's weird too, though. Like I would probably rank LGD, DRX, and most of these teams over FlyQuest, but I can definitely see FlyQuest just beating DRX. I think there is a level of team in this tournament where they're probably not going to lose games to some of these weaker teams. But I've talked to some pro players. I've talked to Bang. I've talked to some other players where outside of the top 3, 4, 5 teams, everyone could beat everyone. Like, I don't think there's some of these teams have like the region value behind them. Like, oh, they're the LPL, they're the LCK. No, DRX and LGD have a lot of holes in them. They are exploitable. And I think teams like FlyQuest, Mad Lions, Team Liquid, and they have to look at and try to like figure out how they can exploit these holes. So I would put LGD over FlyQuest, but
my question is, where do you put TSM?
I put them at number 12 as a question mark.
Because here's the thing, like we're talking about FlyQuest in terms of, this is kind of NA's best chance question mark. I'm not sure if that's the narrative you're going with, but
No.
In terms of Team Solo Mid, they were the ones who won the final. So are they I think one thing I want to ask before we proceed is are they the best team in North America right now? And also with TSM, I don't want to put too much stock in TSM because I feel like people ask why are you going with this NA sucks narrative? Why are you saying NA teams are super bad, et cetera, et cetera? It's not because I hate NA. It's because they make a lot of really simple mistakes that other teams might not. And I'm not talking about LPL teams make a ton of mistakes, right? LGD was super inconsistent all year outside of Peanut and Shie. And one of the things that helped them was that Longsheng, to your point, Tyler, ended up playing better. I'm not going to say he's the best top laner here, but, he ended up playing at a level that was good enough for LGD to suddenly, like, kind of skyrocket into this position that we didn't expect them to be in, right? And they also benefited from the fact that IG, like, kind of inted their drafts against them.
And also we have, right now on our list, we have Mad Lions below TSM and FlyQuest right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So where are we putting, and like Mad did not look good in playoffs in my opinion. But again, this is another team that I look at them and I look at FlyQuest, and to even some extent, honestly, LGT. And I look at these teams and I'm like, okay, like these are teams that could improve massively through scrims. I'm really curious to see if the bot lane meta changes, because if it does, that actually moves TSM up a bit in my estimation, because if you have things like the Kaisa or the Xayah, that double lift is like where the team is going to play a little bit more around him. I think that team suddenly does end up looking a little bit better. Not that like the Bjergsen dragging the team, which is kind of not true once you start talking about playoffs, but I think that a more bot lane focused meta rather than the meta we have right now with like Ashe, Caitlyn kind of thing, would suit a team like TSM more. Arguably, it also suit DRX a bit more if Def wasn't injured, putting a little bit more power in like the carry position for an AD carry. But I'm just wondering like where you guys fit TSM and Mad. And how we're gonna like reckon with that.
So I don't think FlyQuest and Mad are, I know our chat's really polarized about this, but I don't think FlyQuest and Mad are all that dissimilar in skill. I think they're different in playstyle a little bit, although from a, like, who are the weakest players on both of those teams, right?
Solo
and Arome, right? Like it's top laners, right? Like they are similar in that regard. They both have very good junglers in Shadow and Santorin, but they have different playstyles. Santorin is not the same type of aggression. Have the same type of aggression as Shadow, but Santorin is very good at maneuvering around the map. He's got great pathing. He understands how to control objective, right? Like they are both very good in that regard. So I don't have a problem putting both of them near each other, even if it is like 11, 12 or whatever. TSM though, like the problem I have with how TSM played in playoffs is the fact that it required Broken Blade and Spica, who are very inexperienced on the world stage, to step up for them to be able to beat FlyQuest. That is what happened. With Spica and Broken Blade played out of their minds. Double Lift looked like a massive liability for the second half of the season. He was fine in the final, more or less, like serviceable enough for them to get the W. He's also playing against Wild Turtle, who's not also not the strongest player on a FlyQuest team either. But Ignar is like such a cut above Biofrost by like a significant margin. I think FlyQuest has a better chance than TSM at Worlds, frankly. Even in that group, even in a group with DRX and Top, I think Top will run them all over, right? Like Top are the best team in that group, and they should not lose a game. If they do, it will probably be to DRX, as we were joking earlier that DRX can probably. It's one of those teams that could definitely like beat Top in one game and lose to Mad and FlyQuest in the next. That's totally possible. But I think that FlyQuest is probably better than TSM, in my opinion.
I'd rank TSM above them. I believe in Broken a lot more. I think he can actually carry out the top lane, where I don't think LGD can, and I don't think FlyQuest can, and I don't think Mad Lions can. I'm not saying TSM is necessarily good. I think Spica is going to have to step up a lot. I think he's going to have similar performances as he had in the better half of his playoffs to get TSM any chance to be outside of groups. But I do think I like TSM and FlyQuest, to be honest. I don't think either of them are favored to get out of the groups, but I do think they both have their differences. And I personally would rank, I mean, it's going back to our GA versus Bjergsen debate of 5 days ago. When
Bjergsen lost that one.
Yeah, I lost that one. But again, I will stand here and I will say I feel more confident about TSM than LGD, and I can be told I'm wrong and that I'm stupid, but I don't really trust LGD outside of GA and Peanut. And you can say the same things about, TSM. You can't really trust them outside of Bjergsen. But I do think I do like Broken Blade a lot. I do think they enable him well. I do think if we're going to have a meta where topside, you are required, you can play an all-around, you can play junk, you can play, tanks, you can play carries. I think Broken Blades brings a bit more flexibility to some of these other teams, but I'm ready to be outvoted. I know I'm not going to get TSM above LGD, but I'll throw it out there and I'll brag about it.
I feel like
TSM
all
does
of
better.
you.
Yeah,
I feel like all of you are saving your passionate takes for later. Like it feels like all your passionate takes are in the top 5.
It's also honestly, this is gonna sound really mean, but I look at all of these teams and I'm like, wow, you guys all sure have incredibly glaring flaws.
Yeah.
And it comes down to how you feel about how those flaws match up to each other in a meta that we're not really sure about. Like I said, TSM, I would rank them a lot more highly if the bot lane is given more agency than it is right now. I know the agency is a really overused word in Legends coaching, but I do think that again, if we swap to some of these picks, then a team like TSM rises in my estimation because I think Doublelift is going to look significantly better, and I think the team is going to play around him in a more traditional way that he really thrives under. That doesn't mean I'd rank him over LGD. Because similarly, even though Kramer has not had the best season, I think bot lane shift would also kind of benefit him based on his performance historically. Anyway, I have no idea what to do with this mess because I don't have a strong opinion of one of these teams over the other. I do think LGD is going to be better team fighting, just flat out right off the bat. And in skirmishing and team fighting, which is still looking like a very important part of this. I'm not going to say that LGD is the strongest team fighting team, but I would give them the edge over TSM. I'd give them the edge over FlyQuest, and I would also give them the edge over Mad Lions in that regard.
So let's leave it as is for now. We're going to go LGD, TSM, FlyQuest, Mad Lions, Team Liquid. Let's just leave it there for now. That is not final. We can revisit it. But let's get to our top 9. We have G2, Damwon, Suning, JD, Rogue, Fnatic, Gen.G, DRX, and Top Esports. Let's fill up to 5 if we can.
It's DRX, Rogue, and Suning. I think in this they're fighting for 2 spots, I think.
Maybe we actually just put them in clumps like that and not argue the placement yet and just go all the way up and then
DRX super low, by the way.
I don't think DRX are good. Don't think they're good.
Say, this is a very all the way up to top, honestly, which I don't know, spoilers, I think is the best team here going off of playing over the year. And these teams all have really, really obvious flaws, which is the big thing. And
I would add Fnatic to this clump, by the way.
Yeah.
Fnatic should be in this clump.
I don't have a ton of faith in Fnatic. I don't have a ton of faith in DRX. DRX is another team that I would rate more highly if A, Def wasn't injured, and B, the meta had a slight shift. Because then if it's relying on Def and Keria in a perfect world, obviously this team is all about Chovy right now. However, if that slight meta shift happens, it would again give them more agency in the game that would, I think, could benefit this team a lot. Taking the focus away from a farm heavy jungler and solo laners, but I don't know if that shift is going to happen. Again, in terms of what we've seen over the past worlds, what we've seen across this year, I still think the strongest element is going to be in team fighting, which is where previously I would not have given Suning the edge. But based on their most recent performances, I think they've done really well. I think it's actually going to come down to how well Bin can communicate with the rest of the team. He's had some kind of engages and stuff. Because Sophim is just a farm, right? He's not really gonna. He's a very predictable jungler, I think, in that way. But yeah, I mean, again, you look at this batch of teams, and it's just all I can see is I was joking around with Kelsey Mosier just randomly, and we were just wow, maybe everyone is just bad. But
They're all
like that's not
beatable.
actually true. But like I can't stop seeing all of the flaws in all of these teams when we're comparing how they match up, and then I just default to team fighting and skirmishing, where I think DRX could be really good if it weren't for some issues that they're having, honestly. I think we've been a little like overly harsh on them, despite the fact that they have glaring weaknesses. They have some really funky drafts sometimes that don't really make a lot of sense, as do all the LPL teams here. Yeah, I mean,
DRX says Chovy, the others do not.
Like,
Case closed.
That's
Says
true.
Dill 3.
That's
in
true.
chat.
That's true.
I'm inclined to believe that of these teams we're talking about, Fnatic, Suning, Rogue, and DRX, that Rogue is the worst at 9.
Okay.
I'd put
I
them at
think
9.
that. God. See, you have to think about this, right? Are we trying to say that everyone above 8 will make playoffs? Because I don't believe that to be true, right? Like,
Well, it depends on how we're organized.
Well,
like
they're
when we went into the
beatable.
top 20 players, we didn't have any defined criteria. We just came to the table.
Every single team is beatable. Like
Yeah.
again, like I even more than individual players, I have like less strong opinions.
Like, how are you looking at this list? Are you
like
saying
quote unquote power ranking?
I think
and how
this is
teams are going
to
into
power
it.
them going into Worlds based on how likely we think like on just a power ranking of
how likely
good-
we think they will
how
do
good
well
we
at
feel about
Worlds or
them.
win? Yeah.
how good we feel about them in this meta going
Okay.
into Worlds. That's how
and
I'm looking at it.
if that is our criteria, I'm okay with DRX below Suning. Again, really 7, and 8, I think is about right.
Yeah,
I-
I mean they both
but I
have
just-
problems. It's like if you compare DRX and Suning, right? If they're going at it, like if they're actually playing together, I think in the current meta going into Worlds, saying that we're not going to have a meta shift, I think Huanfeng and Sword Art actually do have a slight advantage here. They wouldn't, again, if Def was not injured, and if he recovers, because I think Keria is an incredibly mechanically skilled player. And Sword Art has the advantage, and not that he's still not mechanically skilled, but like Sword Art has just the advantage in like experience, and he has an incredible roaming support on tanky initiators, so it's a good meta for him. So I give the edge to their bot lane there. I definitely give the edge to Chovy over Angel. Sophom and Pioshik is a weird matchup. Pioshik has a lot of funky paths where it looks like he doesn't necessarily know like what he wants to do. Sophom has a lot of funky paths because he really wants to counter jungle Raptors, and at weird times. And then you have Bin, who is incredibly mechanically skilled, but just doesn't have a lot of experience. So again, like I said, he has some funky engages. He cannot necessarily coordinate particularly well with this team, and coordination was a problem with Suning until, like I said, playoffs and regional finals. It wasn't that they didn't have the individual talent. It was that even with their strong record, they still looked really disjointed a lot of the time. And a lot of these wins would come off of waiting for their opponents to make mistakes, right? And that's actually also where I'd give the edge to them over DRX, because I think Suning is a better team at, through skirmishing and team fighting, capitalizing on mistakes that their opponents make, even if they're slowly losing for the first like third to half of the game, which can happen in Suning games.
So we have 5 teams left to put in: G2, Damwon, JD Gaming, Gen G, and Top Esports. We have Top Esports sort of slotted at number 1
That's
here.
easy.
But what about the other 4?
It goes Gen G, G2, JD or Damwon top. That's top. Yeah, that's the easiest part, is the top 5.
I think he just did it in reverse order. By the way, I think JDG is my second. I would think. I'm pretty high on JDG. I think G2 is probably my. It's hard between G2 and Damwon. I think they're both really good.
It's Damwon. Currently, it's Damwon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that Damwon at 3, G2 at 4,
Gen G.
and Gen G at 5.
I put
So I
Damwon
would say-
second.
Yeah, so there's actually, in my opinion, a pretty strong argument for Damwon too, and I waffled over this a lot between JDG and Damwon, because I think a lot of the things, I'm going to talk about some intangibles with Damwon, because we've talked a lot about their actual performances before in top 20 players. But I think with Damwon, this is a really good time for them to prove themselves with what will likely be an audience-less stage. As terrible as that sounds, I know they've themselves spoken about nerves and the difference between stage to scrim and how it's affected them the previous World Championship and how G2 lives rent-free in their heads and all that kind of stuff. They've made some jokes about it in interviews with Ashley Kong that you should actually really watch because they're just fun players individually. But it comes down to JDG and Damwon, and when I look at these two teams, I think that Damwon, it has like overall the stronger like individual mechanical players, right? Like I think that's actually a pretty easy argument to make when you're comparing the like individual mechanical skill of Damwon to the individual mechanical skill of JDG. As I've said before, the thing that always really impresses me about JDG, and I think why people tend to underrate them in the community sometimes, is the way that they draft and play around their team weaknesses. Specifically making sure that, you know, Yakao gets on champions if he's really going to be really successful on, making sure that Hanabi gets farmed up for the team fighting and skirmishing that they like to do around objectives, making sure that, I mean, Loken is just generally having a career year, and this is a really good meta for him because of all the bot lane stuff I said previously. Like, you want him on something that's more like an Ashe, right? Because he's going to be contributing through team fighting, but you're not relying on him to be like this super powered carry. And then Zoom can play like absolutely anything, and then you have Blue Mao who has like weird stable picks, and he really affects team fights and skirmishes that way. So I think JDG are like, they've gotten credit for being the intelligent team in LPL, and while I think that's sometimes a specious narrative around them, I do think they are very smart about how they cover up their own weaknesses, which does make them look really like loose and like bad at times, for lack of a better description. But that is like their greatest strength, is that I think they really know who they are and how they want to play. And when we talk about LPL teams, that's kind of the greatest strength of the LPL teams that we've had that have won Worlds over the past 2 years, is they've really had a strong team identity, and they've known what they're bad at, and they've known how to cover that up really well. I think you could say the same thing about FPX and IG based on draft and team strategies over the past 2 years. So, I mean, I can see Damwon too. I can see JDG too. I feel like I keep just describing how teams play and then being like, I don't really have a strong opinion.
I think that
I see all of their weaknesses too.
Jacob.
I think they're really close. And I think it does depend on how Naguri feels, as silly as that may seem, right? Like, he's going to China after everyone else. He won't get the same level of experience, but they also play later because they're auto-qualified in the group stage, so they have more time to prep up before the play-in teams. I do want to address, I mean, our chat seems to think that like G2 making finals last year automatically would seat them above some of the Korean teams, and like that is a really false logic. That G2 are a very different team to me this year than they were last year, right? Like, Perks was the best AD carry in Europe last year. He is not right now. That is reckless. And Yonkos was, I was not involved in this ranking, but you all ranked Yonkos as the best player at Worlds, and he had an incredible season all last year also, and he's looked at a very different player this year than
that was
than
last
he
year's
was
ranking,
last.
to be clear.
Yeah. Yonkos ranked as the best in the world last year. Caps is incredible, right? Like, Caps is a top 5 player for a reason. Fantastic. Wonder has had a great year. And Mickey Mickey, if we want to debate supports, like, he is right alongside there with Kaiser, who, spoiler, we're putting in our top 5 for supports. So yeah, like, I think that this G2 team has a very different identity, in my opinion, but yeah, I don't think that just because they were a finalist last year makes them better than Damwon or JDG. I think that's a silly argument. I think that JDG is better than Damwon, but I think it's incredibly close. like incredibly, incredibly close. In the same way that I think that like TSM and FlyQuest are really close, right? Like like TSM beat FlyQuest, but I think the two teams are really, really similar. Right now, we do have TSM higher than FlyQuest by one spot, but I think that they are really close to each other in strength. But I would put G2 for sure below JDG and Damwon together. So
I just want to say one thing. Just allow me to interject just one thing. Just about G2, and I just want to put this on the table because we really haven't talked about this much when we're adjudicating these teams. And normally I do love to give the spotlight to my esteemed colleagues. I will just self-promote here for a second. I did an interview with Carlos that is available on our YouTube channel /ESPN Esports. The reason I bring it up is because he brought up a very good point about why he thinks his team is in a position to succeed. The one thing, the two things he says that lead to world success, you guys have talked about this a lot on this stream. Number one is adapting to the meta, understanding what it is. The team that can adapt to it the quickest when the meta is established or understood at Worlds will be the team that succeeds habitually the most. The second thing that Carlos mentions that a lot of people do not talk about is the mental fortitude needed to stay motivated and confident throughout the entire grind of the 30-plus days of Worlds. And he goes into that extensively. And one thing he points to is the G2 documentary that was released last year, the 1-hour documentary about Worlds 2019. There's a scene there where Perks is in the hotel lobby right before their game against FPX. And he's talking to the camera and he says, whether we win or lose, if we win, I go home a champion. But even if we lose, I get to be human again. And Carlos, that stuck with him. He said, that just goes to show you how much mental fortitude it takes for these players to even go through this meat grinder of Worlds and how much preparation it takes and how much thought process there is and how much planning there is. He called it the most strenuous 30 days that you can do in any type of competition ever, particularly mentally. And the reason I bring this all up is because Carlos believes, and he made me believe in talking to him, that G2 is in the best possible position, whether it's past experience, whether it's how these players have grown, whether it's even the challenges that they have faced this year, whether it's the personal challenges or whether it's the team not performing well, whatever it is. Carlos believes that the mental fortitude aspect of his players going into Worlds is at an all-time high. And I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention only because we haven't really talked about that. And that might help G2's case in ordering them here.
I think you can... Can I talk?
Yeah.
I was going to say, we can bring that argument up for almost every team here. We can talk about how Damwon were destroying G2 in scrims. Even G2 were saying this team, we can't touch them. And then Damwon on stage in the quarterfinals, they shrink, they play scared. Self-admittedly, they play scared, and they get destroyed by G2, and the Madrid fans are drowning them out, and they couldn't get over the hump. And how, in 2020, they had to come through a difficult spring season where they looked like trash, where they put it all together and had one of, if not the most impressive single season in LCK history, where they ran through the entire team. You can talk about how TES and Knight, how close they were last year qualifying for Worlds, how very, very close they were to get through Worlds, but IG stopped them at the final door, and how Knights had to work through all this, mental blockage of how he has had to think about that moment for years straight, and how Jackie Love went from IG to top. And I think the thing is, to get to this level, to be one of the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the world, you're going to have that mental fortitude. And I'm not saying G2 doesn't have it. They obviously do. And I'm not saying G2 can't win Worlds. I wholeheartedly agree that they have the talent to do it. And I do think if Mickey X and Perks go back to the Mickey X and Perks of the past and they get more confident, they have more consistency like they showed in the playoffs, they can definitely be a top 3, top 2 team. But just looking at the entire playoffs that we just went through, I would still rank them 4th. Just from everything I've seen through playoffs alone, just all I've seen from summer and spring into now, I would rank them 4th. Not saying that they're going to end 4th, not saying they don't have the mental fortitude. I'm just saying that saying mental fortitude is it's kind of overlooking the mental fortitude Damwon had, or TES had, or JD had. All of these teams have went through a lot of strife. Damwon had a terrible spring, had to come around and have an amazing summer. Naguri just had a collapsed lung, and he's traveling to Worlds right now. If you want to talk about mental fortitude, let's talk about that. Like, I think a lot of these teams have gone through mental fortitude, and I do think G2 is a team that can turn it on when their backs are against the wall. But I do think a lot of these teams share that same instinct, and that's why they're the best teams in the world, and that's why if you're ranked in the top 5 of world going into Worlds, you are a world-class legendary team who could win the championship. Because in this day and age, in this type of League of Legends, it's a crapshoot. It's a lot harder to predict who's going to win championships nowadays than back then it was when it was SKT and Samsung White using vision control and counter-punching strategies just to win championship after championship.
Okay. Fair enough point. I just wanted to bring it to the table for debate.
I think that's the most frustrating thing about ranking G2 is that we know what they're capable of, but if we're basing this on, and again, like I feel like people always look at power rankings and to put it all out there, I hate ranking things. Everyone on this panel knows that I actually really hate ranking things. I like the discussion, but I hate the actual ranking because I feel like people just look at the numbers and then are just like, you're an idiot. But anyway, putting that aside, if we have established that our criteria is how do we feel about these teams going into this World Championship, that is what puts G2, unfortunately, below JDG and Damwon. And that's not to say that G2 can't win Worlds, and that's not to say that G2 doesn't have the talent to win Worlds or the mental fortitude. They obviously do. They've already proven that they can make finals. They've already proven that they can, have a team that no one believed in and beat the favorite to win Worlds in 2018 with the RNG matchup. So, I mean, no one's saying that G2 can't do this, and that's not what this ranking is about. This is about how strong do we think these teams are at this point going into World Championship. And also with the mental fortitude thing, I just want to bring up one thing that I think I've personally underestimated regarding LPL teams in the past is that LPL is a slog to get through. Like, there is a reason why RNG consistently stat UZI because he had like actual injuries and they were like, we don't want you to burn out before we managed to make an international like tournament before he retired due to injuries and diabetes. But like it's like the getting through an LPL season is a ridiculous test of mental fortitude already. Because of the best of 3 setup because there are 17. So I mean, like, that's something that I feel like I've underestimated with LPL teams in the past when I've looked at how well they've done in LPL versus what I think they're going to do at international competitions, because they do have a lot of flaws. Like, you look at a team like JDB, you look at a team even like TES, and you're like, wow, this team has very obvious weaknesses. I definitely think G2 could beat this team. And yeah, sure, maybe that'll happen. I don't even think it would necessarily make this ranking wrong because we're going based off of how these teams performed most recently leading up into the World Championship. And to me, despite their performance in finals, I would still rank a team like Damwon's performance in their final over G2.
Let's do this to round out the list because we can have these conversations for hours upon hours, and we certainly have in past episodes of Rift Rewind. Let's go through the list, all of us, okay? Is there anything that is the most glaring to you that you would like to propose a change about this list as it stands right now? What is the one thing you would look at and say, I actually would like to see this team higher or lower, or swap here, change this or that? Jacob, I'm going to start with you on this.
I feel like Suning should be higher than Fnatic, even if by 1 spot. And you will recall I was the reckless homer and got him on the top 20 in our past thing. It's not a slight at Fnatic here. I think that it's hard to call because they play really differently. But for me, like, if we think LGD is going to top that group, assuming that's where they end up, right? Or they have to end up. If they qualify out of play-ins, they will end up in the same group as Fnatic. And if we think LGD is going to be better than Fnatic and top out, then I think Suning is better than Fnatic because I think Suning is better than LGD.
Thank you for sticking with us, everybody. Apologies for the technical issues. We'll make this quick. Well, let's show you what we have in terms of our top 22 teams going into Worlds, the power rankings as they stand right now. Thomas, our producer, will show them on screen for you right now. Number 1, we have top esports, Damwon Gaming, JD Gaming, G2 Esports, Gen G, Fnatic, Suning, DRX, Rogue, LGD, TSM, FlyQuest, Mad Lions, Team Liquid, Machi Esports, Unicorns of Love, Papara Supermassive, Rainbow 7, PSG Talon, Ints, Legacy Esports, and V3. To not upset the red screen of death, what we're going to do is we're going to finalize this list offline, and we're actually going to post it at espn.com/esports once we have a final list. This is very close to being the final list. We may make a couple tweaks here and there, but we definitely will present you the final list as soon as we can. Tyler, we have a show on Friday. Tell us all about it.
This coming Friday, we're doing the top 10 plays of all time in League of Legends World Championship history from 2011 to 2019. This September 18th, we will be doing the top 10 plays of the League of Legends World Championship from the Prey Arrow in New York City to Xpeke and Dade in 2014, I believe. There's a lot of great moments in League of Legends history, so it's going to be a fun one. And I think it's going to be less contentious than this power rankings. And I do think, looking at the power rankings that we have, I do think we should put Mad over FlyQuest, and this is coming from an NA homer. I do think Mad should be over FlyQuest, but again, as you said, we'll finalize it in the written article.
Well, actually, I just got word that we should continue to push the limits as we can. So stick with us. We're going to try and finish this list right now. I believe that we can do this. I believe that we can make it happen. So let's look at the list again. Where did we end off? I believe, Jacob, you were bringing forward your
Suning over Fnatic by one spot.
Suning over Fnatic. Emily, do you agree with this?
You're muted.
I believe you're muted.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not muted. I'm fine with that. I mean, again, like, these are two teams, like, pretty obvious weaknesses. I think Suning is going to be a much better team fighting team. And again, like, if there's one thing I think I do want to give credit to Suning for, like, all year, it's that they, even in their shakier performances, I remember, I think there was a Reddit thread that was like, Suning is the worst top LPL team I've ever seen, when they were like in third place or something. They just kept winning in spite of making a ton of mistakes. And they will continue to make a ton of mistakes. They have really strong individual players, and they're really good at capitalizing on their opponent's mistakes. And that's where I think Suning will have an edge, especially, again, I know I keep repeating this, the LPL teams, but if it comes down to team fighting and skirmishing, you have Suning as one of those teams that is going to excel in those areas, regardless of the duality of Bin.
So final answer here on Fnatic versus Suning?
Yeah, Suning is fine.
Yeah.
Suning
Suning
above?
should be 7. Suning should be 7. Fnatic should be. I mean, Suning should be 6. Fnatic should be 7.
All right, so we're switching that. Emily, when you look at the list, what is the one thing you would like to bring up in terms of ordering?
I mean, if I was doing tiers, I'd do these teams in chunks. I don't really have like even looking at the top 2, like 2-3 spots, I didn't really have super strong opinions. Sorry, I'm like the worst person to ask. I just like talking about teams. I don't like ranking them.
Are there any ridiculous looking?
Tyler brought up the moving Mad Lions above
FlyQuest.
How do we feel about that?
I think it's deserved. I think they're very even. It's very similar to a lot of these teams. Again, a lot of these teams are extremely flawed, and a lot of these teams are beatable. But I do think that Mad Lions and their repertoire, I do know they look pretty weak in playoffs. Again, LEC is much tougher than LCS. I do think we should give them a bit of benefit of the doubt. I do think they're very close. I think Mad Lions, CSM, Team Liquid, it's all very close, but I do think Mad Lions should go above FlyQuest. And this is someone who thinks FlyQuest can make it out of their group. I do think there is a possibility, there is a way, there is a chance that they do. But for right now, going into the 2020 World, just like we did with G2, right, where we have to be logical about G2, even though G2 has the potential to be the best team in the world, I do think that I would put Mad Lions going into Worlds over FlyQuest. I am a bit more confident overall of the Mad Lions players and their resume coming in than FlyQuest. So I would
What about TSM? TSM is currently above Mad Lions.
I'm saying I'm fine with that. That's
Okay.
me.
So right now it's TSM, Mad Lions, FlyQuest, Team Liquid. That's the 11 to 14 position. Are we happy with that? Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that TSM, Mad Lions, and FlyQuest are all relatively close to one another. Like I'm cool. I'm cool with what we've got there, with TSM being the best of the three. It's about 11, but I think 11 to through 13 is really contentious. And if we were to see all these teams play and all these teams play single games, like I think the results could be very varied, depending on a bunch of different things. But yeah, TSM's fine.
Tyler, anything? I know you were talking about Legacy versus V3 at the start of the show, but is there anything on this list?
I mean, personally, the only thing I would do is I still think Supermassive and Unicorns are better than Machi, but we can just wait till the playoff. We can wait till the actual games happen, because I'm not probably going to get it to happen on the power rankings. But in my heart of hearts, from what I've seen of the PCS, the LCL finals and the playoffs, and the TCL finals and playoffs, I believe more so in Supermassive and Unicorns of Love than I do in Machi. So that's my piece, but we'll wait till the games to actually happen to see if I'm right or wrong.
Anybody feel so strongly that they would object viscerally if Machi went to 17 and Unicorns of Love and Supermassive moved up a spot?
I think Unicorns of Love should go up. If we're going to switch Machi, I like them where they're at. But if we're going to switch them, I think Machi, I think Machi's better than Supermassive. I think they could be worse than Unicorns of Love. So I think one spot change.
How do we feel? Emily, do you agree with that?
I mean, I already made my opinion known, where it's actually really difficult because Machi are not in the play-in stage, so we're not going to see them. And the team that is in the play-in stage from the PCS has had major roster changes due to visa issues, so it's impossible to rank them. And it's impossible to tell like the strength of the PCS from that, which is where I think I'm having an issue ranking these teams, because it's not like Machi is going to go up against the teams that we're talking about from playing, like you.
They very well might, though.
They
could if they make it out, right? But like, we're not going to see that same side-by-side comparison in groups in single games. Whereas if it was flopped, if PSG had somehow won, I'd kind of like write them off and then actually compare Machi a lot more individually. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't have a strong opinion here. I'm fine with the way it is right now. I think like in terms of ranking, looking at these teams going in, I think Machi is kind of a similar story to UOL and like to some extent Supermassive in terms of being at the top of their region. But yeah, like if you guys feel super strongly about swapping it, I don't. So go for it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with UOL
Okay.
above Machi, but not Supermassive over Machi. I think Supermassive should be below Machi.
So UOL, Machi, Supermassive, Rainbow 7, PSG, INTS, and then Legacy and V3. We actually started with a pretty spirited conversation there. Do we care, or do we have any further thoughts on how these two should be ranked in the basement of our power rankings here?
Good luck, you two. You're going to need it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? It's like, regardless of where we rank them, like, do we think either of these teams are making it out? Like, if they do, man, what an amazing story. But based on their play, and like, I'd say the same thing about INTZ. And like, full disclosure, I love those guys. I've watched some of these guys play. I've interviewed them. Like, they're great. I want them to do well. I just don't think it's going to happen.
So let's take a look at our list then. We're going to call it final right here. We'll show you one more time. At the very top is Top Esports, followed by Damwon, JD Gaming, G2 Esports, Gen G, Suning, Fnatic, DRX, Rogue, LGD, TSM, Mad Lions, FlyQuest, Team Liquid, Unicorns of Love, Machi Esports, Supermassive, Rainbow 7, PSG Talon, INTS, INTZ, Legacy Esports, and finally, V3 Esports. And that'll do it for us here on our stream. One more thing to note. Throughout Worlds, we will have a new program called Wake Up Worlds. It will be a daily program that will get you caught up entirely on all things League of Legends World Championship 2020. Won't you join us here on Twitch, Twitter, the ESPN app, and on YouTube as well? All four of us will be bringing you all of our analysis and thoughts as we go through and watch the League of Legends World Championship in 2020. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to my esteemed colleagues. We will see you on Friday for our top 10 plays in World's history.